Welcome to MoggyBoxCraft. I'm Deborah and I make videos about crafting, upcycling, gardening, recipes, home brewing and even the odd travel vlog. So if any of that interests you, hit the subscribe button and check out the rest of my videos. So today I wanted to share with you what fruit, veg and flowers I'm going to be growing here in the northeast of Scotland in my garden from seed. But first I think we better address the greenhouse transformation. If you've seen my videos before, you will have known or you will have seen that my greenhouse used to be white and grey. It was last painted about 3 or 4 years ago. It was starting to look tired and flaky, so it definitely needed a bit of a spruce up, so to speak. And I couldn't decide between pink and purple, so I decided to do both. I know it looks like My Little Pony has spewed on Barbie's dream greenhouse, and I love it. It's fun and cheerful, and it's really lovely and bright to sit in here. It's really cheery. So I've painted the inside pink and the outside a sort of lilac-y purple colour. It's definitely a very me greenhouse. Or is it now a purple house? Possibly, yeah. On to the seeds and plants I'm growing this year. I shall start with some seeds I already planted. I think I filmed that for my last gardening, my only gardening video this year. I'm a little bit behind, but that's okay. Scotland. Summer is also behind. So we'll start with the loofahs. I did start them a little bit late. I did a little bit of experimentation with how to germinate those seeds. I cut two of them, the ends off, because apparently that helps. And honestly, the 2 I did cut did not fare as well as the 2 uncut seeds. In fact, one of them didn't even germinate. So unless I cut them in the wrong place or didn't do it right, I think you're supposed to cut the end of a seed off and then wrap it in damp tissue, let it sprout and then plant it. I didn't do that, I just whacked it straight in the compost. Nevertheless, I have 3 loofah plants this year and they're still growing. I've left them on heat mats, I've repotted them a few times now. Look at this happy loofah. I have popped a cane in for support, but this is the happiest loofah I've ever grown in my garden so far, or greenhouse. So I'm keeping them on heat mats because I just don't trust our weather. The chilies I planted have been really mixed. The prairie hot chilies, the ones out the packet, have not germinated at all. The seed saved chilies have. Make of that what you will. I've potted on the seed saved chilies and fingers crossed we get successful chilies from that this year. And I'm pleased to say the successional veg that I promised myself I would remember to plant on a monthly basis has been successful. It hasn't always germinated successfully, but there we are. So that includes the peas, beans, well, French dwarf beans, different varieties of lettuce, spring onions, spinach. Did I say spinach already? And I've been pretty good and regular at planting those, I'm pleased to say. They haven't always germinated, but I'm trying my best to remember to plant them in the first place. To sow my successional veg, I've basically just filled trays or pots with compost, added a little bit of plant food, sprinkled on the seeds, layered up another layer of compost, and then watered. And yes, I do try to put them on heat mats, because that does sort of help them germinate. And then when the seedlings get bigger, I'm either transferring to bigger pots or transferring into my raised beds. Although because I'm so far north, I have waited until mid to late May to plant anything in my outside raised beds. The weather's just too unpredictable. We can have late frost right up until the start of June, and that just kills all the seedlings and it just seems like such a waste. This year has been a pretty miserable spring. It does feel like it's getting a lot warmer now. Frost could come at any time, so not taking any chances. This lettuce was planted about a month ago. It's a variety Little Gem, and these seedlings are finally looking strong enough to be placed into the raised beds. I've cleared a space in the raised bed for them, sprinkled on some granulated plant food, so using some garden mesh or fabric. It is for weeds, but it does the same job. And these metal pegs. I spread out the mesh material, pegged it into place, and then using some scissors I cut crosses for the seedlings to go into at about 20 centimetre intervals. Then I just picked out the best seedlings and popped them into the areas, into the crosses I'd made in the material. I Of course, remember to add a label so you know what's in that space. This is the first time I've tried this method of growing seedlings through mesh in the hopes that my plants will be a little bit less grubby. Hopefully it'll be a little bit less messy when I come to harvest. For the spring onions, variety White Lisbon, I think they are supposed to be growing through the winter. Never mind, I'm growing them anyway, they were cheap. I used a bamboo cane as a guide and just planted in my little seedlings about 5 centimetres apart and repeated this process with the bamboo cane and planting until I'd planted them all. For the peas, I think the variety is Greenhurst Shaft and the dwarf French beans. I started these in the same way as I did the spring onions. To grow these on in the raised beds, I'm going to be repurposing these bamboo cane arches that I had from last year. Then I just added lengths of rope, tied it onto the top of the bamboo archway, and then secured it in place in the soil just using a peg. To plant them up, I just dug a hole next to each length of rope, popped in some granulated plant food, planted them up, watered them in. Now it's on to the veg seeds that will be my main crop this year in the greenhouse and in the raised beds. I've got sweet corn, variety Pot of Gold, that's an F1 hybrid. Then I've got a lot of seed saved pumpkins. This year all my pumpkins are going to be grown from saved seeds. So I've got white ghost pumpkins, mini orange pumpkins, I'm not sure what they're called, but yellow and green striped pumpkins, and a crown prince pumpkin. So after Halloween last year, I went to Lidl's where they were selling off their pumpkins for about 50p each, and I bought all of these. Seemed like a bargain at the time, especially because pumpkin seeds are so bloomin' expensive. So I just cut them up, scraped out the seeds, popped them onto a kitchen towel in a Tupperware, and left them to dry out. So pumpkin seeds take a really long time to dry out. Make sure you don't close the lid on your Tupperware at all, and if you do, make sure your pumpkin seeds are completely dry, because if not, they will go mouldy. There'll just be some sad mouldy mess instead. Well, I suppose it's still growing something, isn't it? This is the second year I'm growing saved seeds from pumpkins. Last year it worked an absolute treat, however I didn't probably feed the plants as much because they're really hungry plants. So I'm going to try and rectify that this year. I don't know if any of these pumpkins were F1 hybrids, so I don't know if I'll get a true pumpkin to what it originally looked like, but it'll be a nice surprise for Halloween, and they will be pumpkins regardless. But seed saving is the way to go, because pumpkin seeds are so expensive, you get so few of them, and they're so easy to save, and it's so cheap to buy a pumpkin after Halloween for the following year. And on that note, all my tomatoes this year are also going to be grown completely from saved seeds. The varieties I've got are Moneymaker, Sun Golds, and Tigerella. And similar to the pumpkins, I just scraped out the tomato seeds out my tomatoes, well, my best tomatoes last year, spread them on kitchen roll, let them dry, and just store them in Tupperware until now. And to grow them this year, I just either rip or cut off a little bit of tissue that contains a pile of seeds, place that on the compost, kitchen roll and all, cover it with a little bit more compost, water in. I just repeated that process for all my tomato seeds. For all the seeds I sow, I do like to place them on top of a heat mat, just to keep the soil at a nice even temperature and to help germination, especially through the night where temperatures can drop quite a lot, and definitely improves my germination rate. Because before I started using heat mats, germination was very much problematic. Next up is some purple Brussels sprouts. Variety Red Ball. I'm not particularly keen on sprouts, however my mum and dad are, so I thought I'd grow it for them. And this is the first time I'm trying to grow cucumber from saved seeds. I've never tried this before, but I saved them the same way as I did the tomato seeds. So I'm curious to see if it works. The original cucumber packet, the variety was Market Mower, and they did quite well in the greenhouse, so I thought I would just give it a try, hope for the best. Next is the courgettes. So this year I've got 2 new varieties. I've got Gold Rush and Curcurzella. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And also Virginia 3, which I've grown for the last few years. Although I did buy the Virginia 3 seeds about maybe 4 or 5 years ago in Tenerife. We've only got a few left. I'm not even sure if they're going to germinate, but I'm planting them up anyway. And that is the veg tray complete. So just add some compost on top of all the seeds, water them in, switch on the heat mat, place on the propagator lid. Do remember to add labels so you know what you've planted. I also like to add a bit of masking tape and write the date on top of the propagator, so I know when I sowed them. So on to the flower seeds. I shall start with the perennials, or at least I hope all of these are perennials. If I'm not, please do let me know in the comments. I've got pampas grass, feathers mix, tiniest seeds ever. You would not want to sneeze when you're opening this packet. Then I've got Chinese lantern, hollyhocks, charters mix. I already have some gorgeous, like ready burgundy, nearly black hollyhocks in my garden. So I thought it might be nice to add some more colourful ones because they are beautiful and they grow so tall. I'm over sunflowers. Hollyhocks is the way forward, and they grow back every year. They are stunning. Gaillardia red plume, again never know if I'm saying that one correctly. I've got verbena, again not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've got echinacea green twister. On to the annuals. So we've got peony, pale pink Chinese aster, gorgeous flower this one. Zinnia purple prince, and a new one for me this year, poppy pink fizz. Of course some sweet peas, because who doesn't love a sweet pea in the garden? And of course I had to try some seed safe flowers. I've got lilac poppies, variety candy floss. I grew these in the garden last year and they were stunning. Like such a beautiful flower. After they flowered, I left them to die back, left them to dry out, and then cut and saved loads of the flower heads. So once they were dry, just pop them in the Tupperware, store them over winter. And then to get the seeds from them, you want to shake the flower heads. So I just pop them in the Tupperware and shake. And that releases the seeds. And there is loads of seeds. So I really hope some of these germinate. If not, I've got plenty of them. Then I've got some winter pansies. Grown in much the same way as the poppies. Left them to die back. Cut off the flower heads. Have stored them over winter. And they don't rattle out quite the same way as the poppy heads or poppy seeds do. Yeah, they don't shake out the flower heads as easily as the poppies do, but I'm just going to plant them and see how we got on. So that's all the seeds in the trays. Added some labels. Add some compost, water in, and leave to grow. It's been nearly a month since I sowed that last batch of seeds. And it's been a bit of a disaster. Our weather has been horrific. Freezing 1 minute, roasting the next. And trying to keep an ambient temperature for these seeds to grow has been a nightmare. So I have had lots of them not germinating, which I've never had before. If I was doing it again, I would do exactly the same, but I wouldn't put the lids on. I would leave them off and just have the soil, that ambient temperature, rather than keep the moisture in as well. About a week or so ago, I potted on the seeds that had germinated. The Crown Prince pumpkin, they did brilliant. Striped pumpkin, lots of those. White ghost pumpkins, mini orange pumpkins. I have one prairie hot chilli, and the rest of these chilies are the food waste chilies. The Tigerella tomatoes did amazing. So much so I've even kept some extras. I got 2 sun golds. I think that's it. Everything else was a tiny bit of a disaster. So I've lost quite a lot actually because I used up the seeds in the first batch. I don't know if I'm going to get them. However, so veg wise, I re-sowed the money makers and the sun golds. They are starting to grow there. Courgettes, the Courgazelle is doing brilliantly. Nothing with the Gold Rush, and Virginia 3, nothing. Seed saved cucumbers, nada. Sweet corn, I only had 4 seeds left, but they are all growing. Brussels sprouts, red ball, 3 so far. And these are the flowers. So I had 1 Zinnia Purple Prince seedling appear, and this is it. Bit leggy, but seems to be growing fine. So I re-sowed sweet peas, which are starting to grow. The seed saved candy floss poppies are starting to grow here. Really pleased about that. The poppy pink fizz, again, got a few here. I was really hoping we'd get more of them. Nothing in the winter pansies. The hollyhock, we've got a few. Chinese lantern, nothing. Verbena, nothing. Winter pansy, nothing. So that's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? Everything else is looking fairly healthy, and the successionals are growing along quite nicely. Needless to say, I'm pretty gutted, but that is the joy of gardening. Some you win, some you lose, and it is always the gift that keeps giving. Or doesn't give, in this case. But it's still early enough in the year for planting, so I'm not too worried about it. And it's a lesson for next year. Put the propagator lid on if it's early in the year. If it's later in the year and it's a bit warmer, don't. Just use heat mats. However, one exciting thing I have planted is a grapevine, variety Red Flame. So I've tried growing grapes before without much success. One I left outside and didn't reappear in the spring. I bought some bare roots, although I think they were delayed in the post, so I think they might have dried out a little bit too much. I planted them in various places throughout the garden, outside, inside, well, in pots, and one outside the greenhouse. Unfortunately, they didn't grow at all. So, because of all that, I have decided to plant my grapevine in the greenhouse. Normally we plant a vine outside the greenhouse, make a little hole and for it to grow into the greenhouse. Because I live in Scotland and the climate is very cold, I thought I would just go ahead and plant it inside the greenhouse. Because it's not really a greenhouse, it's a lean-to and it's not heated. So I thought this would give my grapevine the biggest protection I can from wind, cold, frost when winter hits. In more unfortunate news, I've given up with the avocado. After doing so well last year and wrapping it in a heat mat, it has definitely died a death. It is definitely not growing back, it does not look happy, and I think I've got to accept, again, our climate is just too cold. I think if I'm going to grow avocado, it has to be a variety that is hardy. And this ain't it. So I do have 2 more avocado plants. Going forward, I think what worked best is leaving them in pots and having them on top of a heat mat in the winter in here, in the greenhouse. I think avocado growing has to be put on the back burner. Although, should I end this on a happy note, it's probably the fruit trees are all in bloom. They're looking lovely. Fingers crossed for pears and apples and blueberries and berries. That'll be lovely. And I'm also getting ready for my first crop and harvest of asparagus. In fact, spoiler, I've already had my first crop and eaten them and it was delicious. 100% recommend asparagus to grow yourself. So much more delicious than stuff you buy in the supermarket. I think that's enough for now, because next week, or my next gardening video, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more in depth of what I'm planting in my raised beds, what I'm going to direct sow, and the fruit trees I've got growing in my garden. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, leave a like, leave a comment, share and subscribe. Of course, subscribing is optional, but it is very much appreciated. Oh, so thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!